Right. Yeah. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Women's Football Spotlight. Myself, Dan Conway, and my co-host Ross Ballock. And today we'll be covering Man City's and Chelsea's double header, double game, whatever you want to call it. The League Cup final, then the Champions League quarter final, and then we'll also cover some of the other Champions League games, and we'll go through the WSL talking points, the results from the weekend, and we'll see what else comes up. So, Ross, let's start with the League Cup final. Let's go in order. So, Chelsea 2, Man City 1. How do we feel? What are your thoughts of the game?
Yeah, we spoke about it last week. We felt it was probably going to be a bit closer than a lot of people anticipated, and it turned out to be that way. I felt that Nick Cushing's ability to set up a team and the time that he had with the girls were probably just enough to work with the players to bring out a pretty coherent game plan. Firstly, got to say, like, fair play to everyone involved, like the scheduling, being able to clear the decks and allow that game to kick off. I know it was an early kick-off, but that is a pretty prime kick-off time for overseas TV, and for the Women's League Cup to get that kind of spotlight on a weekend where men were playing their cup final and there were Premier Leagues going on. I think that was a real positive. Obviously, the negative was the pitch at Pride Park in
Pride Park.
Derby. It wasn't the best, and that was a real shame. But I think everyone's excited about this one because it's obviously the first of four meetings, like back to back, between City and Chelsea, and with Gareth Taylor being sacked, Nick Cushing coming in. You know, like I said, I think we both felt it was probably going to be pretty close, and it turned out to be that way with City
Yeah.
taking with Chelsea taking the trophy, but just 2-1, real narrow victory, and actually, two scrappy goals for Chelsea, real scrappy goals. So that's what stood out to me, like the closeness of the game. What about you?
Yeah, no, it's funny because, the scrappy goals, the best quality goal came from Man City, but they end up losing. The strike by, I know we're big fans, and particularly you're a big fan of Fajino, but the strike, that goal, that lovely strike from her, and she just proved what we've been talking about. Like, she is a real talent. 20 years old. Yeah, great goal. It's a shame that they came up short, but I fully agree. I think I was unsure with Nick Cushing coming in with such a short period of time. I thought, yeah, he could have a bit of time, could he? Would it be an edge or not? But I think it did prove to be an edge. I think he changed the tactics slightly, so would have caught Chelsea slightly off guard, but it wasn't quite enough that game. But interestingly enough, with the two goals for Chelsea, it was no surprise Lauren James set up Ramirez's goal. Again, scrappy goal from Ramirez, but it's a goal, and they won 2. They won 2-1. But Ramirez, what are your thoughts on Ramirez as a player? Because she's obviously come Chelsea. She's been there a year now. How do you think she's settled into the Women's Super League?
Yeah, I think she's done. I think she's done all right. It's it's a real tough one because there's a lot of talent in those forward slots. Obviously, when she was bought, Emma Hayes was predominantly like playing two up front, and I'm not sure that necessarily Sonia Bombasto has kept with that this season. And it's there's real competition for places there, and that could be a great thing. But when you've paid quite a bit, a significant fee for a player, I think as fans of the league, and as maybe the player yourself, you kind of expect to start. And that's been made a little bit easier with the fact that they've had an injury to
Uh, the,
Sam
the
Kerr,
yes,
only one of the most famous women's
yeah,
footballers in the world. But no, yeah, like obviously they've been helped with the fact that Kerr's been injured for so long, and obviously Ramirez has been able to kind of take advantage, keep game time up. But it was a real scrappy goal. No, what I would say is the through ball from Lauren James was absolutely brilliant. Picking
yeah,
that back to goal, turn face and play that ball like perfect weight. Ramirez didn't need to break stride or anything. But I think if you're Man City defenders, Man City manager, Yamashita in goal, you'd be frustrated about conceding that goal. Because at first you think, all right, keeper's got this, and it just takes that lucky bounce and she's able to slot into the back of the net. But the pass from Lauren James was lovely.
It's an interesting. You make a great point because when Sam Kerr is back, suddenly you're gonna have Sam Kerr, you can have Ramirez, Aggie Beaver Jones, and then Lauren James can also play, as the number 9 as well. And there's others that not off the top of my head that I can't recall, but it's gonna be really competitive, and keeping all that number of strikers happy is going to be a real task, a great problem, but it's going to be interesting to see if all three can stay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Sam Kerr's injury has been so significant. As a general rule of thumb, I probably wouldn't expect her to be back at her best until close to similar amount of time that she's been out. And it's been a significant, it was a significant injury, a significant amount of time out. It's going to take her time to get back to her best. She isn't just going to come back in and be great. And obviously that's where the downside of like the size of the league comes into it. The fact that there isn't a lot of games for her necessarily to be able to pick up that fitness. But they have. I think she's been included in the Champions League squad for the knockout stages. So you'd like to think that they've done that because perhaps they feel she's going to be able to play a role for them in those latter stages. And we'll get to the Champions League, but obviously they feel that maybe she's close enough to get back to not want to put her in knowing she isn't going to play. But I actually thought it made for a really competitive cup final. And we've spoken about this pretty much every week that we've been on. That is what we're looking for. That is what is going to grow the game. Like, we know there's financial disparity in the league. We know that Arsenal spend over £6 million a year on player wages, and we know that West Ham spend between about 1.5 and 1.8. That's a huge difference in not just the numbers, but that is inevitably going to bring about a chasm or a gap in quality. So I think more than anything, what could have happened was Man City could have, rolled over, had their bellies tickled, and just the unbeaten team of the WSL, runaway league leaders, new manager coming in with only 3 or 4 days to work with the team, it really could have gone a completely different way. So I think as a fan, I was just grateful for a competitive game. And I think obviously it's difficult to play Chelsea. To play Chelsea 4 times on the bounce is quadruply difficult. But actually, for a coach as tactical as Cushing, what I would say is it's going to give him a real good chance to have a look at them. And I think we saw evidence of that come Wednesday night when they met again.
Well, let's talk about that. So Champions League, what did you think when you saw that Bunny Shaw and Firmino were both out?
Well,
before seeing the result, before the game happened,
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think my initial thought was, well, that's the game done, because I felt real bad. Like, obviously with both players, they're obviously I'm a huge fan of Firmino. We spoke in depth about Bunny Shaw last week, how she is clearly like head and shoulders the best striker in the league at the moment, and obviously that doesn't count Sam Kerr because she has been out for so long. But for me, she is clearly there is a different level to her than Alessia Russo or even Beth England, like other players that are just behind her in those goal scoring charts. And then on top of that, she probably gets, not better, but she definitely gets better service than Beth England does. But just on her own, Bunny Shaw is just, for me, the best striker in the WSL, and right up there, in women's football. And so any team's going to miss their starting striker, but especially when their starting striker is one of those greats. Fajino, obviously, I love watching her play. I think I think there's a World Player of the Year there at some
Wow.
point. She's only 20 and she already has so much experience as well at international level. Back in Japan, the team's there, but she's just she's a get out of your seat type player. And again, you lose someone to provide that service for your striker as well. And I have to admit, I thought, well, home leg, that's kind of their chance. And then those two players missing, and I really thought it was
Yeah.
going to be worse than the Saturday. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I don't think I think there's very few people that when they saw the team lineup and saw no Bunny Shaw, no Fajino available, they're two of their very best players.
And
I
that's on
think,
top of the players they already have injured. And there's no Lauren Hemp, and there hasn't been for a
yeah,
while.
forget about
Alex
Lauren Hemp.
Greenwood, and there hasn't been for a while. It's. I think that was something we talked about in terms of Gareth Taylor. There were some mitigating circumstances this year as to maybe why City aren't ahead of United in that second place. And those injuries are a factor. But yeah, it's just tough old season, I think, when you start losing players like that for such a big game. But who they do have is Vivian Miedema.
Yes, well, perfect. Well, we talk about tactical, Nick Cushing tactically getting it right. I think he definitely got it right in that sense. Miedema come on at half time, and I think they got their grip on the game, didn't they? It was like it was a tactic. It just showed you. I think it just showed that Miedema still has that quality in her to be a game changer. Come
I,
in,
I wonder if there's maybe more to it, because obviously they had a young player, Lily Murphy, start,
yes, that's
and that's
so.
who she came on for. And I was really, really impressed with her. I was really impressed with
It's
her.
great to see young
And
talent, English talent coming through.
yeah, and I have to admit, I was a bit surprised when she came off. But obviously, we spoke last week about how like Miedema's played quite a lot in centre midfield for City this season, and I just wonder. Obviously, she's had some terrible injuries over the last couple of years, and I actually wonder whether this was something on purpose. Like, because you could say to yourself, like, why is he starting this young player ahead of Miedema? I mean, obviously they played with one up front in the first half, but I could totally understand why people would maybe ask that question, like why is Miedema not playing? But I wonder if there was maybe some thinking of the back of the injuries over the last couple of years, the fact that she's playing in centre midfield, which will mean a lot more running just naturally, like positionally, than you would up front. And obviously they played Saturday afternoon on a not great pitch, very heavy on the legs. You wonder if it's maybe something purposeful that he thought we can get to half time, or I can bring her on the second half and she can have that impact. And maybe I'm trying to
No, I can confirm
give
you're correct because Miedema was quoted between the two games. Miedema was quoted as saying like basically alluding to her injuries and that she they have obviously got 4 games quite tight together, and she said it's just not realistic for her to play 90 minutes in 4 games back to back. So it definitely was strategic and
yeah.
managed, and so you're right.
I didn't want maybe anybody to think that I was giving maybe too much kudos to the coach. Someone with a coaching background, I'll always try and do that. But obviously they changed it 4-4-2 in the second half, and Miedema was helped by having somebody up there with her. But she just came on, took grip of the game, and just went, "Nah, we're winning this." And
Yeah.
she just a brilliant second half performance. Both goals, probably could have had a hat trick as well. But you could see the difference when she came on. And if that was strategic, all the more to the coaches, the backroom staff, and also like the players. Like, no player wants to be told like we're going to manage your games here. Like, everybody wants to play in all the games. and it could have really easily said, well, rest me for the cup final and I'll play all 90 minutes of the Champions League. Like that isn't out of the realms of possibility. So I just fair play to everyone involved.
Yeah. Another kind of British prospect who's doing well, Gracie Pryor, young 20-year-old centre back. She's just started a couple of times for Man City, but to start in the Champions League and play against Chelsea, and I thought she held her own. I thought she looked good. So another kind of English talent bleeding through. It's really good to see that Man City are making the most of their academy and giving them opportunities.
Yeah, it's you never want to see players out injured, but obviously with Alex Greenwood not being there, it's next player up, and there's not much you can do about injuries. People you just need to cope, and I mean, obviously, Man City have invested in their squad. There is a pool of talent there, and rather than make excuses, you do just need to get on with it. They have resources that other teams in WSL would die for, but yeah, I just thought she was really calm, composed. Again, maybe the two games so quick back to back, it helps a player in the sense of, well, I've just played against this player, or I've played against these players. I
Yeah,
have a better understanding of movement or any kind of things that they want to be able to do when they're in the ball, and that can help you when it's so quick. But yeah, it's great to see.
okay. And I also thought, just quickly, I thought for the Yamashita, I thought she had a great game. Obviously, she would have had to have a good game against Chelsea for Man City to win 2-0. So, wanted to just point out there, give her some respect.
Mm.
And I also thought it was a good decision refereeing. I know it's easy to criticise, but Ramirez, she had it would have took Chelsea would have been 1-0 up. Ramirez scored, but it was offside, and when they looked at it, it was actually offside, which is nice to see because it's always disappointing when you see those calls and you see that someone marginally was offside. I mean, so respect to the official that got that right.
Yeah, and obviously
So
no VAR
yeah,
in the game. So, we've spoken a lot, or it's been spoken a lot about, like, in men's football, how, like, it's almost like the security blanket. Assistant referees aren't giving offside decisions because, well, if they're wrong, it'll just be cleared up type thing. But the assistants, you don't give too much credit because it's like just a basic part of your job. But yeah, it was a really fine call. I have to admit, at first, I wasn't totally convinced it was the
yeah,
right call when the flag came up, but the replay showed it to be slightly offside, and like you said, fair play. But I think it makes for a really interesting second leg. But the Champions League, the three English teams, I think they're all still in with a chance. But for City, what you'd say is they've done what they need to do. Home leg, 2-0, clean sheet, um, and you move on to the next, to the return leg. But they've done everything they could to put themselves into the best position they possibly could.
yeah, and it's a funny one because obviously Chelsea will be home, so it's that Chelsea will have the bit between their teeth, but
Stamford
also
Bridge, I think.
oh great, but also that's interesting. I might have a look at the tickets for that. But also Uh, Man, Ci- Man City will have hopefully Bunny Shaw and Firmino back, so they've got that advantage, and Chelsea got their home advantage. So it makes it sets up, like I said, for a tasty tie.
Yeah, and obviously Chelsea are going to have to come out and play.
Yeah,
They're 2-0 down. You'd say, I think I'd say if they can go into half time 1-0 up, it's game on.
yeah,
But I think they do need a goal in the first half, and they need to keep a clean sheet.
yeah. Man City to win that will have to have one probably their best game of the season too.
Yeah.
But Nick Cushing, he might come and he's got a point to prove. So let's see what happens. Okay, let's jump to. Oh, did you want to? Let's touch on the other Champions League's ties quickly. I know you watched them. Is there any kind of standout points you want to cover and mention from the other games? So Real Madrid.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the pitch. I don't necessarily feel as upset as maybe Ian Wright does about it. Like, we can't control the weather. Real Madrid play all of their games at that stadium. They share that stadium with Real Madrid's Castilla team, their B team, who play in a professional league. It's not a piece of patch of grass behind the King's Head. It's a proper pitch. It's a hybrid pitch. But the weather was just really unfortunate. Madrid just were hit by a storm. The referees deemed it was playable. What I would say is, I don't think Real Madrid are that good. I still think Arsenal have a chance there. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it was the conditions, but I've got no idea why Williamson was jumping over a ball that was rolling on. And
Yeah.
that's not a mistake she's going to make again in the second leg at the Emirates. I don't think Real Madrid were that good. Arsenal had, I think, 13 shots, like 2 or 3 times as many touches in the Madrid box, forced more saves out of the Madrid keeper than Madrid did with Arsenal, forced more corners. Like, Arsenal were in control of that game. And actually, what I hope they haven't come away and used the pitch as an excuse. I hope they've gone, yeah, conditions weren't ideal, but both teams were playing on the same pitch, in the same weather, and we dominated that game. We just couldn't finish. And I actually think that they've got a really good chance of still going through. And I know that sounds crazy being 2-0 down, but again, I think their second leg's at the Emirates. If they can get a big crowd in there, and Arsenal normally do really well in terms of attendance when they do play at the Emirates. I've got every confidence that they can overturn that deficit. Again, they need to keep a clean sheet. That just has to happen. But yeah, for some reason, I watched the game. Game finished 2-0 to Madrid, and my first instinct was Arsenal could still go through. And I'll stand by that.
I think you make a good point, because I think when we think of Spanish football, there really is just one main team in Spanish football, and it's the Barcelona women's team. So you're right. I think Real Madrid aren't Barcelona by any stretch of the imagination. So I think you're right. If Arsenal turn up at home with their A game with a big crowd, you'd think that for that kind of tie, they'll warrant a good audience and sell a good amount of tickets. They'll have that the 12th man. And and Russo's been in great form, so I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully, just fingers crossed, we might have another English team through. But on to Barcelona Wolfsburg, a bit more of an interesting tie.
Tie's over. It's not really an interesting tie, let's be honest.
Great goal. I'm going to mention the beauty.
Oh, the fourth goal, Barcelona's fourth goal. Mwah. Lovely jubbly stuff. No, like you said, they and Chelsea are the 2 best teams in Europe this season.
Yeah.
And if City go through, I'd probably, I don't know whether they've done like the route to the final or whether it's going to be drawn again. We should probably, again, as a women's football podcast, we should probably look into these things, but we don't. But in all honesty, like, I can only, if Chelsea don't get through, the only team I could see giving Barcelona problems are Lyon, who, again, they had a very
comfortable,
not easy, but it was pretty, 2-0 victory against Bayern Munich, who weren't great either. I think just because of the quality of the opposition and the fact that it was an away victory, I think Lyon are through. Barcelona are definitely through with 4 away goals against Wolfsburg. So I think those 2 ties are done. So I really do. If you go, So my predictions are: I'm going to predict that Chelsea are going to turn it round.
Yeah,
I think Arsenal are going to turn it round, and I think Barca and Lyon are already through. So those are the
4 big hitters,
and they that would be great games. And again, if I knew if the draw had been made or not, or whether they could draw it, you just hope the English teams are kept apart.
Yeah.
It'd
be nice to have someone all the way,
yeah. Plus, if we can get some media accreditation for the final, that would be awesome. All England final. Let's do
it. Okay, let's jump on to the Women's Super League from the weekend. So, bit of a we talked about the 6-pointer, 9-pointer, 12-pointer, whatever you call it. Crystal Palace 3, Aston Villa 1. Villa dominated possession 65%, had 19 shots, but lost 3-1, Ross. Thoughts on that? Anything that stood out from that game?
Well, yeah, Villa are Villa
They're
are
spiraling.
spiraling, and it's not pretty to see. Obviously, Natalia Oroya was brought in January, I think, and it's not been great. On paper, there is a great there's a really good squad there. There's a squad who should definitely not be fighting against relegation there. But we spoke about Palace last week and just said how organised the new manager had got them, and if they could stay organised and stay together, they had a real chance. And he started to play Katie Stendel in this like number 10 role, just giving her this freedom,
let's touch on
and
Stengel.
it's working. It's working for them. Yeah, they might have dominated the possession and might have had more shots, but at no point did I think Palace were in any trouble, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
to me, just judging on that third goal for Palace, where D'Angelo's come miles out of a box and then just played a square pass to Palace player to run through,
what
for
was
Stengel to
going
run
on?
for an open goal. I know the cliche, women's football and women's goalkeepers, but for me, that is just confidence. That is a team. Yeah. That is just evidence for me of a squad that is just lacking confidence. And do you know what? If Palace can avoid relegation, what an amazing story that would be for the WSL.
Well, like I said, this was a 6-pointer because obviously they're next to each other in the league. But you're right, like Villa dominated all the stats, but you got to score goals, and you're right. I think it's a mental thing right now. It is that confidence, like you said, because Jordan Nobbs hit the bar, but they never really looked. I know, just I'm with you. Like never was like, oh, this is an easy game sorted. But you're right, like Crystal Palace always looked a threat, and I think Katie Stengel, you got to give her credit. I know, being a Liverpool fan, she was a great player at Liverpool a couple of years back, but she's come in exactly what they wanted. Someone with experience who's come in, grabbed the ball by the horns, and she was crucial to I think all 3 goals, if I'm right, at least 2 goals.
Yeah. Well, did she score 2 of them?
She's crucial. She scored 2 and provided assist. Provided assist for second goal.
Yeah.
Set up the first goal. So she was crucial with them, and obviously
she scored the goal at the end, and then assisted the other 2.
Yes,
but yeah, right. Like not just her, but also I want a shout out to Ashleigh Weerdon.
Yes,
she has really impressed me in the last 2 or 3 weeks. That is a player that if Palace do go down, there is a player who a WSL club needs to snap up. She's only 25. She's played for some great teams, but left-footed, pacey Dutch attacker. Somebody from the WSL has got to keep her in the league because
she was tremendous. Great. She was carry the ball, drive forward. She was the man of the woman of the match, the player of the match. But her and Stengel, I think they're not carrying Crystal Palace, but are crucial to them surviving relegation potentially.
Yeah, they've just kicked off. Obviously, we're recording this the following Saturday for lots of different reasons, technical reasons, times, jobs, whatever. But obviously, they've just kicked off 20 minutes ago against Everton. It's 0-0. But yeah, that one looks like, again, I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe pick up a point or more there, and that could really put the cat amongst the pigeons for Villa, because like I said, they just look completely devoid of any confidence at the moment.
Agreed. Okay. Liverpool 3, Man United 1 at Anfield as well. So Amber Whiteley, jeez, what is the job hers now?
We're getting into like territory with Amber Whiteley, like with Mo Salah. Just give him what he wants. Just give her what she wants. Yeah, I've got no problem with the club taking their time. over this. If they don't decide to give her the gig on a full-time basis, she is going to be a good WSL manager next season for somebody.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great fun. Anfield, under the lights. I know we're biased, but there's nearly 16,000 people there, which is a good turnout. I like the fact that they had the cop stand open for the home fans. Obviously, Anfield's a 60,000 seat stadium. You can make it look good and presentable for the TV in terms of just the cameras are quite low down. You don't see the whole side of the Sir Kenny Dalglish stand. So fair play to we hoped everybody would go along. So yeah, fair play to everyone. Nearly 16,000 people there, and quite frankly, they got bang for the buck.
Yeah, I think
a Man United team whose defence we extolled the virtues of only 2 weeks ago, for them to concede 3, I did not see that happening. In all honesty, I'd have been quite happy with a point. But, wow, 3-1.
Yeah.
And Olivia Smith.
Yes.
Wow. Worth the money.
Yeah, she's definitely growing into that position. You know, she is still young, but 20 years old, but 2 great goals. Just looks at promising talent. She's got pace. She's got a great shot on her. She looks a great buy. So
yeah, for that first goal, she went past Grace Clinton like she wasn't even there. We again another player that we've really praised in the last few weeks, in Grace Clinton, but you know, she was dragged out into that left back position, which she probably wasn't comfortable with, and like you said, with Smith's pace, you know, it was, and I thought it was a really clever finish as well. I genuinely don't think the goalkeeper had any clue that was coming. I think she was expecting a cutback, and she just took that opportunity, hit the ball with power, 1-0, and yeah, it was a great evening for a Liverpool fan.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what is interesting stats wise. You know, we're talking, you know, possession wins plaudits, but goals win games. Liverpool had 40% possession to Man United 60%, but they had about the same amount of shots. Liverpool had 5 shots, and Man United only had 1 more, 6 shots. So when Liverpool had possession, they made it count. So
Yeah.
I think this result, like I said, I agree with you. I would have took a point against a solid Man United that don't concede goals. So great win for Liverpool, but even greater case Amber Whiteley's building to get this Liverpool job. But I agree.
Can I just mention the second goal though from Nagano? Because I thought her finish was great, but as a team goal, that goal's come from a Man United corner, and they've gone from one end of the pitch to the other. It was I love, again, as with the coaching hat on, you love seeing those types of goals, because that is the stuff you will work on in training. You will work on your transitions in training, because they are so important in football now. And it was just great to see. It was like, you know, a classic Klopp era Liverpool men's counter-attack from one end to the other. But I thought the finish was brilliant, because the cutback came back at quite a bit of pace to Nagano, but also slightly behind her. It's so easy, as we've seen like Hoyland do in the last few weeks, it's so easy to make that run to the near post, and when it comes behind you, not quite get the connection you need. But she got a foot round it, and it was a great goal. It meant Liverpool went into half-time 2-0 up rather than 1-0 up, which I think they probably deserved to do. But it was just a great team goal. You know, we've spoken about Fagino's goal, very individual, and I just thought this one needs to call out, just because, again, Olivia Smith with the assist, but I think it was Olivia Smith with the assist, but Nagano's finish was just wonderful.
No, agreed. Great weekend for Liverpool. Everton 1, Arsenal 3. Alessia Russo with 2 goals. Now takes her to 10 goals and 2 assists in the league. Yes, and Arsenal had 68% possession. Was this game, did it plan out as we expected? Any thoughts on this game?
Well, the fact that Arsenal didn't score the third until late suggests that it was close, but again, I don't think it was particularly. Everton aren't going to be relegated. They're not going to challenge for Europe.
Steady, aren't they?
No, steady Eddies. Not a team that I find particularly exciting to watch, but
I feel
yeah,
this second season. I know we've talked about it before, but I just feel this second season, Russo's really coming to her own. Like that first season at Arsenal, wasn't her best, but she's coming this season. Renee Slagers, I'm sure, and her coaching team are a part of it. But we're seeing like a Russo that's hitting great form, and it hopefully will then lead into the Euros this summer. Just great timing, really, for England.
yeah, and it's not just that she got number 9 and number 10. For me, I think her like overall play has really improved this season. We talked, about England and her hold up play, her ability to just retain possession and allow others to get into
She's the
positions where she
best.
could bring them in. Um, yeah, for me, it's not just the goals. I think it's her overall play that's really, really struck me this season. And not even just this season. Like I just think particularly, and I'm not saying the two are connected, but since the change of manager, I've just seen just a real step up from her. And obviously, as England fans, that's great to see. Um, but yeah, I think she's 2 behind Bunny Shaw now, and obviously with
Yeah,
Shaw injured, this may and with obviously with her injured and City playing Chelsea, these tough games that they've got in the calendar, you wonder if maybe Alessia Russo can snag a few over the next couple of games and get herself in the shout for Golden Boot, which would be
it would just
great.
be,
What confidence
sh-
boost that would be for her
it,
leading into the Euros,
it would
going in as
be
the league's top goal
perfection.
scorer. Yeah,
Is exactly what England would need. And
yeah,
you're right, I think, I imagine there is a correlation between Renee Slagers and obviously every manager, coach has a different approach. And obviously, her relationship, I wonder if it is, a result of the relationship between her and Renee Slagers and her coaching staff. So it'd be interesting to see. But yeah, great form, just what we need. Tottenham nil, Brighton 1, Frank Kirby
next.
goal. Yeah, the end. Yeah, not much. Just not. There was a reason it was last on the highlights on the
Yeah,
women's football show.
it was
All
it
ten
was a
seconds.
really really uneventful game.
Please for Frank Kirby though.
Yeah, lovely to see Frank Kirby get on the sheet on the goal scoring bus. Spurs with no shots on target in the game, and for me, I'm going to keep playing this record until people get bored and they make me turn it off, and then I'll go, all right, I'll put something else on, and then I'm going to put this record back on.
Good.
How Beth England cannot get into the England squad with the amount of goals, league goals she scored this season in this Spurs team that create so little.
It says a lot about her, doesn't it?
I don't know. Get her on that plane to Switzerland. That's what I say.
Just
But
shows you how clinical she is because her service is very limited. So the service she is getting, well, I'll drag up her stats for her shots, expected goals, her accuracy, but it'll be high because, like I said, the chances are
yeah,
so few.
again, they're not going to get relegated, Spurs,
No,
but they're not. And obviously, this is something we'll talk about in another show because it's something that I think deserves a whole show by itself. But
making the
at
league
some
competitive.
point now, the league needs to look at this and go, right, okay, I know not everybody can win something and not everybody needs to be involved in a relegation battle. But when you've only got a small amount of teams in the league, when we're only talking about 2 teams who could go down, and 1 team who can win the league, and it's March, you've got a problem.
Yeah,
You just do. You have a problem in the league, a systemic issue. And again, I'm not picking on him, but like Ian Wright saying, like, you can't get rid of relegation. I'm sorry, you need to look at everything. The women's game doesn't have to look exactly like the men's game. And I'm going to say something quite controversial on that. I don't see why European Super League couldn't be the route forward for women's football at the moment. At the moment. And I know a lot of people aren't going to like that, but I don't think it's something you should just take off the table. I like the fact that the WSL, the new co, have come in and they have said everything's on the table. Um, the idea that you have to have relegation and promotion is not one that I necessarily stick with at the
Well,
moment. At the moment, not saying
funny you
forever.
say that. Can I just throw this in there? So I recently spoke with uh, the chairman of a women's football club in the fourth tier of women's football, and that person said that they basically welcomed the non-relegation for the next couple of years, and I was surprised because I thought, oh, this is from the horse's mouth,
Yeah.
but they saw the value in increasing the size of the leagues, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, and to do that, you might need to do things a little bit differently than they are done in men's football. Men's league football has over 100 years of history behind it. Like, just to say, no, we have to have relegation and promotion in British football. Yes, in men's football, I understand that they're so far along now, and the money is in such a place that the teams can do that. But like I said to you, we've got Arsenal spending over £6 million a year just in player wages, and West Ham spending about 1.5.
yeah,
You've got the WSL's TV deal worth £8 million, and you've got the NWSL TV deal out in the States worth 60. If you want to keep being the best league in the world and you want to develop players, you want to develop competition, and you want the league to be bigger, we might have to do things a bit different. And I'm all for not necessarily following tradition. But I know we've kind of come on to there from a really boring game. But again, it's just a really boring game. Like, since we've been doing this podcast, I've basically spoken about there's three leagues. There's people trying to get into the European places. There's 4 or 5 teams below them, and then there's Villa and Palace fighting for against relegation. And at March, when there's still what seven,
eight,
eight
yeah,
games left of the season, it's not good enough. It, Football
has to
clubs make
change.
money. Football clubs make money in 3 ways: getting people in the stadium, getting people watching on TV, and sponsorship. You're not going to drive those three things in a league which is over by March. And you can say,
Yeah,
oh, well, there have been times in the Premier League where Man City, Man United, whoever won it with loads of games ago. Liverpool are sat at the top of the Premier League with a 16-point difference. Yeah, but again, there's hundreds of years of tradition and fan culture and all these things. And yes, obviously, you go back in history for women's football to the point where they were banned from playing, women
yeah,
were banned from playing. That's had a huge effect on that. But you can't, you've got to think outside the box, because if the league's uncompetitive, you're not going to get a bigger TV deal. And if the money's out in America, where are the players going to go? They're going to go
exactly.
where the money is.
And the
A lot
thing
of them.
is, if they let's say they had no relegation for 2 years, it gives the clubs a bit of financial security as well. So it for them, they can maybe
What?
think they can invest a bit more. They can be a bit more ambitious because they know they're not going to get relegated.
Well, it can't be 2 years. That's the problem.
It
The
has to be
problem you
more.
have is, and I understand it, they've talked about possibly like no relegation for like 4 or 5 seasons.
Oh
But
wow,
I've spoken to people in the finance world who have just said 4 or 5 years isn't enough for an investor. It
wow,
just isn't. You know, I'm not saying it can't ever happen. But unfortunately, we live in a world now where the only football teams in this country who can afford to support women's teams at the highest level are Premier League teams. We need safe Premier League teams to invest into their women's teams. And not all of them are. Not all of them are doing that. I look at a team like Brentford and think, what's happening with your women's team? Now, I'm sure they have one, but they don't have one inside the first 2 tiers of the women's pyramid that I can see.
yeah,
And unfortunately, if you're going to be depending on, if you're going to be until you can raise the competitive nature of the league and improve its popularity, this season WSL attendances have plateaued. There's a great boost after the Euros, but then they flattened out again. And so you go, okay, well, we need to get more people in the stadium. More people in the stadium, and the more competitive the games are, the more people will watch on TV, and it'll all drive those things. But at the moment, you can't take anything off the table. And I know it feels like maybe we're slagging Tottenham off a little bit here, and we shouldn't be because, like I said, they're not going to get relegated. But that was a dull game, and you get dull games in football, and I've got no problems with that. But they seem to be regularly the final team
Too regular.
in the highlights reel, and just I'm saying it because I want the whole league to be better.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, I think it's going to be possibly a necessary evil, and I think in the grand scheme of things, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it was decided, I think, yeah, it'll be a challenge, but I think worth it in the long run when in 10 years' time we benefit from the league being so much better.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Okay, on this leads us nicely into World Sevens football, another controversial topic. So a seven-a-side football tournament 6 weeks before the Euros begin. Yeah, controversial, good, bad, ugly, timing, all this. What do you think, Ross? What do you think the objective is? What do you think? Is it a good thing?
Obviously, the objective is to increase the popularity of the game and to help the players make some money, neither of which is bad. I don't have a problem with either. But why can't they just wait another summer and there isn't a tournament on?
Yeah.
Like, I know that's a very Eurocentric view, but if you're Serena Wiegman, do you want your players going to play a seven-a-side tournament 6 weeks before a major tournament?
It's a guarantee that you're going to come up. Someone will get injured and be out of the Euro squad from that.
Yeah, but also it's just 6 weeks before.
And I think the other challenge of it is you're right. The money is two things. The money is tempting. Now the downside is that it seems from so far it seems that only the top teams will be invited. So again, it makes you worry that is this only going to increase the gulf of the top teams? You know, we're talking about those three. You know, the Women's Super League into 3 tiers. Is it only going to push that top tier of teams further up? That's my concern with it.
Again, I just think that for this straight away, the timing's naff. Need to look at that. But also, like, if you're going to do that, why not do it in like a sense of like the WSL will bring a seven-a-side or 14 of the best players in the WSL. They'll come and play seven-a-side against 14 of the best players in the NWSL. Get the Japanese league involved. Let's get the A League involved. Let's get Serie A, Bundesliga.
Sounds more appealing to me.
Why not do that? Like, at least, like you said, at least that doesn't have an effect where certain teams benefit and certain teams don't. Especially right now when we're trying so hard to bring some parity into the league. Like, and there's lots of ways of doing that. And I think I've got no problems with the format. Like, you know, I'm a cricket fan. As much as I hate the 100, I do see what T20 has done for cricket.
Yeah.
Like, and that short form, that Americana style entertainment side to the game, with the glitz and the glamour and the halftime shows and all these things, they work in these formats. So I've got no problems with it. I just don't understand. A, why is it happening 6 weeks before a major tournament? And B, how is it that in March this is coming out now?
You'd have thought it'd be for next year, like I said, but it's going to be potentially in 7-8 weeks' time.
Yeah, either they're rushing it, or people have known about this for a while and have purposefully kept it under their hats for whatever reason. Like I said, I think the concept is interesting, and I've just spent the last 5 minutes talking about how Ian Wright shouldn't just write anything off that he doesn't like or that isn't tradition. So I'm going to sit here and say, no, seven-a-side, what's the point in that? The format's really interesting. I've got no problems with it. It's just the timing. Why this summer? Why not next summer? Why not talk to all the leagues involved and say, let's get a mid-season break, January, February time, and do it then? You know, like, just let's try everything. Got no problems with that, but just the timing just seems really funny to me. It'll be interesting to see I'm sure that all the players want to be involved because
Yeah,
the prize pot's quite good.
about $6
You know,
million or something.
yeah, that's not to be sniffed at. But it'd be interesting to see who's invited, who takes up that opportunity, and like you said, just the first time somebody goes down in that league, it's there's a reason why not many people watch pre-season friendlies because nobody wants to get injured in a pre-season friendly. I actually wonder, like, if you're going to do it at that time, how good is it going to be? I think you're going to miss the point because how serious is it going to be taken?
Yeah.
And I'm
All
not sure it
players pull
will,
out
but
as well. Players who carry, because all players carry niggles, and
yeah,
some will
all
pull
season,
out
yeah,
because they want to be at the Euros. But the other thing is, think of the Masters tournament when they used to do the Sky, men's
yeah.
Masters, and that was hugely popular for several years, and then it took a hiatus for however 5+ more years, and it's coming back by demand. So there is a place for it, you're right, but it just seems the timing's wrong. And credit to them, I get that the money will be tempting. But again, as long as it doesn't, my concern is that I hope it doesn't, it's not just only the top teams, which it is alluding to the fact it will be.
Yeah. Well,
But
it will be to start off with because that'd be the easiest thing to do. I just think the timing's flawed.
yeah, you're
But I
right. It
think
should have
the
been
concept could
every
be
other.
really
But
interesting.
then they'll be concerned, I imagine, if next summer competing with the men's World Cup. That would probably maybe what they're thinking, maybe playing it now before this, playing it, I don't know.
But then, what I would my answer to that would be there's a gap between seasons ending and I mean,
Doing the
you'd
women's.
say, well, if you're worried about it, like there's potential it could butt up against this new men's summer tournament that happened this year, the
Yeah,
FIFA. So unfortunately, never thought I'd say this, but there's too much football on. It's always going to clash with something. I think the concept's really interesting. I think it could really work. I'm not stupid enough to think that a short form of sports entertainment couldn't be a good thing, particularly for younger audiences, to be introduced to a sport. Like, of course it is. Like, that's one of the key things they've said. Oh, there's two 15-minute halves, easily digestible highlights on social media. It'll be great. Yeah, of course it will. Okay, let's give it a try.
I,
Just not this summer.
I think you make a good point though with the women's, because the women's football has a slightly bigger gap in have like a winter break. So I think that could be potentially where its place is, but then also that's considered their recovery time where halfway through the season you can recover from some of your knocks.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's only 12 teams in the WSL.
yeah,
For the English teams, you could easily make it work. It just like I said, I've got no problems with the concept. I think it could work in terms of getting people into the game. I just think the timing is flawed for this summer.
agreed. Okay, Ross, I think that's all the things I've got on my agenda. Is there anything you want to raise before we wrap up today?
Nah, good mate. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you everyone for joining in, and we shall see you next time.